Chris, we got a lot of things going on in the country, and I had you on Tuesday, and I kind of wanted to give you another shot at trying to explain some things about the border situation right now that's going on, and I guess we maybe start back at the beginning where it got to the point where that was under which president was it? It's that started the biggest problem started was under was it under Eisenhower when they started moving people back?
Are you talking about immigration?
Yeah.
It was 1965. LBJ, who was by far one of the worst presidents in American history. He was well known for being he was in favor of segregation for the longest time, and then when Kennedy passed, JFK died through the assassination, and then LBJ took over. He did sign on to the end of segregation, which was a shock because he had been a segregationist his whole life. I believe he did that for political reasons, not because he truly believed in the cause. But what most people don't know is the end of segregation occurred because of the Republicans in the Senate. It was Senator Dirksen of Illinois and another senator who ramrodded that bill through. In 1964, when the 1964 Civil Rights Act, came to the U.S. Senate, the Democrats, who were in the majority, filibustered their own majority in order to stop the Civil Rights Act from passing. In other words, the Southern Democrats wanted to keep segregation as legal in the South, and so they filibustered their own majority. That's unheard of. The filibuster is supposed to be used for the minority party to have some rights against the majority party in the Senate. But the Democrats were the majority in the Senate, and they filibustered, the Southern Democrats did, they filibustered their own majority to keep segregation legal. Insanity. One of the senators who filibustered and tried to keep segregation legal in the South was Al Gore's father, who was a senator. Funny how no one really talks about that.
Right.
So anyway, I'm sorry?
No, I just said right. Nobody talks about that.
Exactly. So the Republicans who were in the minority were the ones who pushed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 through, ended segregation. I think the number is something like 83% of the Republicans in Congress voted for the 1964 Civil Rights Act, a much, much greater percentage, but the Southern Democrats tried to stop it. Okay, so he gets one thing right, LBJ. Didn't get a whole lot of other things right. In 1965, there was not a civil rights bill, an immigration law that greatly liberalized immigration in the United States. And that's where this all starts. It was called I'm trying to get the exact name for the law. I think it might have been, let me see if I can get the act. I'm bringing it up in my computer. Yeah, the Hart-Celler Immigration Act of 1965. What it did was it reduced our ability to screen people who came to the U.S. And by reducing that ability to screen people, we started allowing people in the U.S. without really knowing their background, whether they would be loyal to the United States. In fact, a lot of problems we're dealing with today go back to the Johnson administration, the massive explosion of the Vietnam War, the massive explosion of the welfare state, ripping off Social Security. Do you know that LBJ and the Democrats in 1967 took all the money out of the Social Security Trust Fund?
Wow.
Yeah.
There's no money. It was supposed to work like a savings account.
Yeah.
With all that money in there plus interest. Instead, it's gone. They used it all. They took the money out in 67. So LBJ did a lot of damage to the United States. And so anyway, this bill, this Immigration Act of 65, kind of removed a lot of the checks and balances that we had in place to make sure people immigrating to the U.S. aligned with our worldview and subscribed to the American, worldview. And so all of a sudden we started bringing people in who didn't agree with our values. I'm sorry, you were saying something?
No, we're agreeing. She's agreeing with you.
I'm just agreeing with you, yes.
Okay, so that's where it all started. LBJ, you can trace a lot of our problems back to LBJ. He was, again, someone who was known for being a racist and a segregationist and not a very nice man. He's the one that got us bogged down in Vietnam and many other problems. Okay, so he also gave us the explosion in the welfare state. Now, check out immigration being more liberal. Prior to 65, we screened people. My parents are Italian immigrants. Many of you have heard the story. Both of my parents grew up in Italy during World War II. And on my father's 7th birthday, October 4th of 1943, on my father's 7th birthday, the Nazis took over their town in Italy, not near Caserta, near the city of Caserta, a small little farming community of about 3,000 people. The Nazis took over the town, kicked everyone out of their homes and farms. They had to go live in caves in the mountains. They were there for a whole month, including my mother and father, who were ages 5 and 7. And they ran out of food after 3 weeks. Because they were farmers, they had some of their animals with them in these caves in the mountains. And so they got by on goat's milk. And all they could do for a whole week was pray, just pray. And after they prayed, the U.S. Army showed up. The U.S. Army showed up after they prayed. Think about that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, the U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division out of Fort Stewart, Georgia, shows up, drives the Nazis out, gathers food, feeds the town, saves their lives. Okay, so they immigrate here legally, and they come to the U.S., and they contribute something. They came here with nothing in the 1950s, with the clothes on their back and a couple bucks in their pocket, had to work. And that's another difference. Prior to the explosion of the welfare state, immigrants had to work. But today, I'm looking at the statistics, and what we're seeing, this is a town hall article, townhall.com. I actually used to write for this townhall.com organization years ago when my wife and I lived in D.C. I'm looking at their figures. And according to the Center for Immigration Studies, 76% of immigrants, this is legal and illegal, are on some kind of welfare. Now, the whole point of bringing immigrants here is to put them to work and make them contribute something to society, like my parents. My mother's family immigrated to the U.S. in 1950. My father immigrated to the U.S. in 1952. He was 16 years old. My father worked 2 jobs. My mother and my mother and her sons, and my mother herself, when she was old enough, they all worked their tails off. Yeah. And they contributed something. But with the explosion of the welfare state and the fact that we're not screening people coming into our country, 76%, this is the statistic, are on some kind of welfare program. So instead of contributing to our society, they're taking something from it. So that's a problem. So you see what the problem is there?
Yep. Yeah.
Now add the motor voter law that I spoke of. In 1993, the Democrats in Congress passed a motor voter law, which was signed by Bill Clinton, and you can register to vote at the DMV, but the DMV is not required to ask if you're a citizen. Now look at the problem there. Yeah. So you have millions of illegal immigrants. Joe Biden has allowed about 10 million illegal immigrants into the USA.
Wow.
If they go to the DMV, they get a driver's license, they register to vote, and even if they themselves don't vote, someone can fill out a mail-in ballot in their name.
Yeah.
So you see the voter fraud problem there.
Yeah.
Plus, then you have the 76% of them are getting on welfare and not working. Okay, so all these problems. So that's why securing our border is the right thing to do. It's not about racism. It's about protecting our borders. It's about sovereignty. And the other thing is, even the ones who do work, which we're glad to see, illegal immigrants working, they're still taking jobs from Americans.
Yeah.
Well,
you see
I had family that lived in the Southwest, and the problem that they said that actually the migrant workers were never the problem, because they knew the system. They had been doing it since, generations have been doing it, and they make their wages. They send it back to of course the problem is a lot of times they make their wages and they send it back to the money gets all sent back to their where they're from. Mm-hmm. But that's not been the problem, because they knew how to get along. But the problem has been these people that just come across, and then they show up at a hospital. They show up. Different things. I mean, law enforcement catches up with a lot of them, and they really don't have the time or the money to send them, to take them back. So they end up just turning them loose.
Well, just off of what you just said and combined with what Chris was talking about, like if you think about it, like if an illegal immigrant had a paid under the table, they're getting welfare, they're making the money and sending it back to their country. It's not even going back into our economy.
No.
But not only is the money that they're making not being recycled in our economy to help us out, but they're also getting benefits that is taking away from the people that are actually working.
And that's what the problem is. And a lot of the money gets transferred by wire. Chris and me spoke about this before, but it gets transferred by wire. And what the president wanted to do was he wanted to put a surcharge on the wire for sending money outside of the country,
so that we could at least retain some of it.
So at least we would get 10 or 12% or 8% or whatever they came for. But under President Trump, what a lot of people don't realize, there was thousands of Mexican soldiers on the Mexican side stopping these people.
Yeah.
But then we had the great debacle of 2020.
Right.
Or 2019, actually.
Yeah.
Am I right, Chris?
Well, it's 2019 and 2020. And let me be clear. Again, you nailed it yourself when you said we're not against migrant workers.
Right.
We're not even against refugees, because there are legitimate people escaping dictatorships.
Yeah.
Our laws allow for migrant workers who are not citizens who can come here temporarily and work on a work visa. We're okay with that. We're not against refugees who are escaping dictatorships, and we're fine with that. But there are laws and there are things in place to allow that to happen legally. They're being disregarded, and then to find people coming here and not contributing, but instead 76% get on welfare programs, sucking and bleeding our system dry, driving up our debt, taking benefits away from Americans. That's a problem. Do you know which ethnic group suffers the most because of illegal immigration?
It's
African Americans.
I was going to say that.
It's been proven. African Americans are hurt the most by illegal immigrants taking jobs from Americans. And so how is it racist to say, no, you can't come here illegally and steal American jobs? It's the opposite. The best thing you can do for the African American community to help them get jobs is to keep illegal immigrants from taking jobs. So look at the numbers. I'm reading, again, everything I'm saying isn't theory. This is fact based on data. The National Policy Institute, I'm using their numbers to back all this up. They're saying between $14 and $20 billion are spent each year on welfare to illegal immigrants. $7.5 billion on Medicaid to illegal immigrants.
Right.
$12 billion, these are approximate numbers, $12 billion a year on school education just for K through 6. $27 billion a year for education for what they call anchor babies, people who that's another story we could talk about, but it's a form of illegal immigration. $3 million per day is spent to incarcerate illegal aliens, putting them in jail.
Wow.
That's $1.2 billion a year. This is the National Policy Institute numbers. 28% of all federal prison inmates are illegal immigrants.
You know, I never really thought about all of those factors of us losing money in so many different avenues because, like you said, okay, we're educating their kids, they're taking our jobs, they're sending our money to their family, and they're collecting welfare. And so I don't think that I've ever thought of it on those multiple levels until you just brought that up. When I think of immigration and those jobs, I normally just think of like them coming over and having babies and collecting welfare and having jobs. I've really never thought about the fact that they send it back to their families and what that does for our economy that way, as well as taking more.
I'll have to do the research, but I believe it's $12 billion a year. It gets sent back across.
Wow.
I think I'm almost positive that's the number that gets sent.
And
back
so they're helping their country.
That's just the Mexico they know of, because a lot of it's streamed from like Western Union and different things like that. So it goes through a service.
Yeah.
To get there.
Well, I will say this too, and these are just like conversations that I've had with my friends. Like some of these people that are immigrants then own like a gas station, right? And so then they use their welfare money to purchase the things that go into their gas stations that they sell, like their drinks or whatnot. Well, do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's like a whole crazy.
That's another avenue, because right now what we're trying to do is we're right here in Fayette County. We're working to try to get working on voter integrity, and we're trying to work again. We're trying to we're not going to try to fix. We'd like to get Act 77 completely abolished and getting taken out before, because it's a problem. Because right now, if it wasn't for the mail-in ballots, we wouldn't have all this immigration right now, because Donald Trump had almost stopped.
Yeah.
Well, he really did. Remember what we said on Tuesday? 58%. That's almost 60% of Joe Biden's votes came by way of mail-in ballots. And while some of them may have been legit, not all of them are, because again, you're not requesting the ballot. You're not showing an ID to say, this is me. I am the same person filling it out. There's no chain of custody. There's no accountability. So even if you just say 5% is fraud, if 58% of Biden's votes came by mail-in ballots and only 5% are fraud, that's enough for Trump to win a majority of those states. There were 6 in particular and 2 others, including Virginia and Minnesota, that looked like they were leaning Trump. So there's 8 states that probably, we can say with about 95, 96, 97% certainty, any number of those 8 states probably go for Trump without the mail-in ballots. Just take 5% off the top. Let's just say 5% was fraud. That's enough for Trump to win a majority of those 8 states. Really, all he ever needed in 2020 was to pick up on any number of 3 or 4 states, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, maybe PA and Nevada, something like that, some mixture. And so those mail-in ballots, which are unsecure, together with illegal aliens who are clearly allowed to register to vote at the DMV, because the federal government's not requiring the DMVs to find out if you're a citizen. You see where all the fraud's coming.
Yeah, because I wonder if they even know. They probably don't even know that they're, eligible to vote anyway. So they're, that's the other end of that, right?
That's part of the problem. But right here in Fayette County, we examined 200 mail-in ballots, and out of the 200 mail-in ballots that we got to visually see, there was 41 errors, just in one election.
Yeah,
and that was
only for one race.
That was only for one race. That didn't include the whole ballot.
Right.
So we know what's going. We know that there's problems with the mail-in ballots.
Yeah.
We definitely know there's problems with the mail-in ballots. But like I said, this is something that we have to. It has to be addressed.
Right.
And not one of the mail-in ballots, not one of them was there a signature verification for any of them. So
right. And then, John, you were talking about 41 errors.
And that was only out of 200. Out of 200.
Yeah, right. And that was only in 6 precincts out of 77 precincts.
Yeah.
So when you start adding it up, you're really looking at potentially 3, 4, 5, 6, 7% of the vote.
It's 7%. It actually works out to almost 7% the number. But I mean, in order for us to get to that, we're going to have to get the rest of the mail-in ballots, and we've been stymied in court every way we can.
Mm-hmm.
And well, you know the story, Chris. I mean,
right.
you've been at. Yeah.
Sure. So your election, as far as you know, because you did the research, you went to the judge who gave you the permission to look at the ballots. As far as you know, about 7% of the mail-in ballots, according to you and your research, that they were filled with errors.
There was errors, yeah.
And that would have been the primary race, right?
That would have been just for the primary.
Right. So now add that to all the other problems that illegal immigration gives us. Again, we're not against migrants coming here and working and people who we know are on a visa. We're not against refugees who are escaping dictatorships. We're talking about people who come here. We don't know who they are. We don't know what they're doing. They're somehow getting on the voter rolls because the DMV is not required to ask if you're a citizen. People are voting in their name. At least the potential's there to vote in their name, even though they're not voting. Someone else can using a mail-in ballot, and then all these problems that we talked about with welfare and everything else.
Yeah, but then you add in the fact that they're doing electronic sign-in sheets instead of having the actual physical votes, and then they know before the precincts close who voted and who didn't, and who may or may not need a ballot filled out for them. I'm not saying that that's happening, but I'm saying that that's a possibility.
Hey, Chris, it was great having you on again. I really appreciate it. But one thing, Chris, I do want to. Your dad came here, and your mother came from Italy.
Yeah.
My great grandfather came here, and before he could even leave to come to Fayette County, he had to have a sponsor and a job.
Right.
So you think about all this stuff. You think about all this stuff, and I believe by trade he was a blacksmith. He ended up there was a job. They had a job for him at the stone quarry, and that's where he ended up working. I think he ended up being a blacksmith eventually. My dad could fill me in on that, but I mean, they had to have jobs, and like you said, your dad worked 2 jobs in order to be, because he wanted to stay here, and he wanted to make sure everybody knew that he could take care of his family himself.
Right, he wanted to contribute, and the National Policy Institute is saying that, this is their statistic, $200 billion per year of American wages are suppressed by the illegal immigrant problem.
Wow.
So we're losing $200 billion going into our economy.
Hey, Chris, we got to cut you off. It was great having you on. It was great having you on Tuesday. I'll be talking to you soon.